the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, we are back with our latest episode of the Refs Review, part of the SM Media Podcast Network. I'm Scott McPike. It's always a pleasure to be your host. I would like to apologise, we've not been here in a week or so. It's entirely my fault, but we are back. We are obviously going to... Well, Steve's obviously not here this week. Hopefully we'll have him back on the next episode. But Des Roach is here as always, mate. It's a pleasure, thank you.
It's a pleasure. I think we're going to need to have a wee look at the rebranding of this, and we call it the Refs View. I think we just call it the Ref View. Because let's be honest, you get more holidays than Santa.
He does well, yeah, he does well. Always seems to miss kind of big events as well. But like as I say, we're not going to do every single game over the past couple of weeks. There's been a few kind of headline incidents and big kind of reveals that we're going to touch on. We're not going to get into too much in the way of like games. So I know Celtic game was last night. It was a penalty incident. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it. I don't know if you've seen the Celtic penalty incident last night. From what I've heard, it was like
minimal.
Yeah.
Minimal. I seen it today. Somebody in work pointed it out to me today, and contrary to probably teachers are busy, so I didn't really get a chance to look at it overly closely. I will do, but yeah, you can imagine both sides of the fence claiming, "Oh, it's never a penalty." Others says. What I will say, when I seen it, there wasn't a lot in it.
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't seen it. We'll have a look at it. We'll probably get something kind of maybe out in the channel as soon as we can. But again, there's been a lot happening. We'll get into. I want to touch on something that happened 11 days ago, and it got the world talking. I feel as if I was the only one who hadn't seen this. My attention, you and Steve had put into the chat about the situation with Mohamed Diamande. I hadn't seen it for 3 days. And when I seen it, everything had kind of come and gone. That is, I'm not going to say it's the worst decision I've seen, right? Because I've seen plenty of bad decisions. It's the worst thing about it to me is not the red card, right? Because I don't think it's a red card. It's the unbridled arrogance I find from Nick Walsh. He is not changing his decision there no matter what. And when you're at that stage, that's basically him saying, and again, I think we've seen enough to it's been overturned. It's been rightfully called out for how bad a decision it is. But I think I'm pretty good at judging kind of body language and character. That's an arrogant guy standing by his decision and not listening to anybody. He's clearly been told by VAR, you need to have a look at this. You might have got this one wrong. But he is so set in his ways that he won't change his mind. And when it's that. And Walsh is bad for it. He's probably the worst in the refereeing circles for it, for standing by decisions. It's that's the worst thing of it to me. It's not the red card and giving the red card initially. It's the fact that he's seen it, stands by it, and he stands by it for nothing more of. You're not telling me I've made a wrong decision here. And I just think that's a terrible, terrible way to officiate.
Well, first of all, I can't disagree with the decision that wasn't given. Okay, I'll touch on other things about body language later on. When I first seen it, I certainly didn't think it was a red card.
No,
absolutely no way it was a red card. From Nick's point of view, when he seen it, he was almost looking straight down the barrel at it. He didn't really have a perspective, an angle view at it. So I can understand why he's maybe thought that Diamande has swung his hand out. That's pretty much all I can give it for. Where I now have to put my unbiased head on it is what happened there is Don Robertson was VAR.
Mm-hmm.
Again, probably one of our 2 or 3 highly most experienced referees we've got.
Yeah.
Don has deemed that sufficient enough to think something's not right there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comfortable with it. Nick, I want to invite you across to have a look. So that straight away tells you that there's a difference of opinion.
Yes.
Don doesn't think it is. Nick does. What Don then does is he gives Nick the opportunity to review it. And let's be honest, referees they've got the final say on it. So if he wants to say, no, it's a red card, I'm happy with it, then fine. In my opinion, if I'm getting called across with somebody like Don Robertson to say, I think you might need another wee look at this, that would plant a seed of doubt in my head. When you then look at it, is there contact made? Not particularly. Kevin Holt, I believe, was a Dundee United player.
He get
He,
booked as well.
no, no, and he'd already been on a caution, and he was
Right,
the
okay.
one, and he was the one who forced Diamandi off
Right,
balance,
okay. Right, that's right. Okay.
right? So
Hmm.
I'd be perfect, and again, if you go to the letter of the law, for someone striking out with their hand at someone's face when the ball's not involved, it has to be negligible contact. Was there any contact?
No,
None. And
I
if there
don't
was
think so.
any contact, it was negligible.
Yeah.
So therefore, it doesn't fall under the red card ordering off offences. So for me, there was enough doubt given there to Nick to try and. I mean, they were digging him out a hole basically. They were trying to give him that lifeline, give him that opportunity. As I said, it's entirely within Nick's own remit to whether he accepts that advice or whether he doesn't. He hasn't. He's chosen not to accept it at that moment in time. While I think he's wrong, I do think that he could have used his body language better, used his communication style a lot better, and I also think he should have been taking action against Holt, who was involved to to
Well,
to
that's
sort of
what I
create the
thought. That's
incident.
what I thought because when I looked at something, I looked at something in the game and it said Kevin Holt had been booked, and I thought, right, okay. And then I watched it back, and I thought, right, I can kind of see the thing where you just book both, and you're like, right, let's just move on. But now you're saying like Holt wasn't booked at all. I don't get what he's seen there, and it's more. I do think that he's looked at that and he's made his mind up there and then. This is I'm giving a red card here, and nothing's changing his mind, and that is wrong. That is why this is that to me is the worst thing of this is. And yes, it's came and gone, and Rangers have got their appeal, and I think Rangers have rightfully got their appeal. The statement after it that you had obviously
Shocking.
spoke about, you were on the hotline that night,
Yeah,
and that was horrendous as well, and we'll get into that. But it's just when you see Nick Walsh and you think you're just so arrogant in yourself at that moment, you're nothing's changing your mind. So therefore you're ignoring this tool that is actually helping you here because all you like it takes about 2-3 minutes to look at that.
he
I
did have a
don't
lengthy. He did have a lengthy view.
I don't
I
get
I
it.
I, I wouldn't use the word arrogance. I wouldn't use that. As I said, I think he could have portrayed his body language better and his communication style better to sell the decision. But it's really difficult to sell a decision when everybody can see that the decision is wrong.
Mm, yeah.
And as I said, he's perfectly entitled to keep his own counsel and perfectly entitled to stick with his own decision if that is what he felt he said. I'm just saying that for me, as a referee, if someone got me across to look at it when it's a major decision. Thankfully, it was late in the game. There wasn't terribly much to go with it because it could have been entirely different for that to
And
happen
that's
after 10.
that's the other thing as well. Everybody you speak to says it'll be if you are like if that happens at the start of the game, it'll probably just get a booking at the worst because they don't want to make that big decision early in the game. That shouldn't matter what decision
Shouldn't
time
matter.
it shouldn't matter, but because it's late in the game, you're like, why? What is kind of going on here? What is the need for that? I think it is really, really, as you say, minimal contact. I don't think there's any intent there. I just think it's a rubbish decision. I think it's made worse by the fact that Walsh just stands his ground to the point. I think to the point of arrogance. I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying to the point he looks very arrogant in his decision. And but the statement after the game reading that I think I read the statement before I seen the decision, and I'm thinking they're not making that statement in usual circumstances. That is
No,
you never see that.
no, it was appalling. I have never, in all my time, even before I was refereeing and I was a young boy, I have never seen the SFA make a comment on a decision within an hour of a
Yeah.
game. Never. It usually comes a day or so after. And what was even more galling is the fact they put out that statement, which took them, I mean, they put out two statements. So
Hmm.
as soon as they put out the first statement and they're backing up Nick Walsh, which again they're entitled to do, but it then gives Rangers absolute no leeway when it comes to an independent panel
Yeah.
review because the SFA have already nailed their colours to the
Hmm.
mast and said that they are supporting it. So where do Rangers go? right? Thankfully, and I don't know why, but thankfully they've came out and they've had to retract that statement, which again makes them look extremely silly
Yeah,
because why did that come out in the first place?
yes, absolutely.
Somebody's spoken, and you're not telling me they've spoken to the janitor or the
It just
night
feels like
watchman.
like I know like we work in places where like you have to speak to about 10 people before you can put something like that out.
Of course,
Like, do you know what I mean?
that's
Like it's I just and a Sunday especially like it's
I know
I couldn't get my head around it.
it was a very mismanaged and ill-managed situation, and I don't think the SFA came out with any credibility on that
Well,
whatsoever.
it's not really been a great week for the SFA, and we'll get into everything that's kind of been brought up. Now, after that, we had obviously Derek McInnes. We had heard this obviously before that Derek McInnes had been issued an apology from Willie Collum regarding the blunder in the Kilmarnock's game against Hearts, and Derek McInnes had said that that was not enough. I'm just going to read the quote here. I spoke to the head of referees on Monday and got an apology for the first goal that was given against us. For anybody that hasn't seen it, it was I think there was an offside and a foul that was questioned. It
Both,
should have
yeah,
been given for offside, and it's good
and a
there's an
foul.
honesty, yeah, and a foul, and there was a dismission of that. But the fact the VAR doesn't get involved in this case, those are protocols and procedures that should be, by this time, a prerequisite and a fundamental. That's the issue here. Like, I think that was the big issue that everybody was highlighting. VAR doesn't get involved for a clear and obvious error.
Yep, and it's a matter of fact. That's not a matter
Yes,
of opinion. It's a matter
yes,
of fact. Now, if it's down to opinion, that's when VR can be subjective.
hmm
This isn't subject. This is objective. This guy
yeah,
was offside and he
yes.
created a foul. It's not picked up. Kilmarnock then go down a goal to the player who was offside. So he's gained an advantage and he's created a foul. So there is, yeah. I received correspondence pretty much straight after the game,
Mhm.
as we let you see. When I seen it, I was, yeah, I was pretty dumbfounded that it wasn't picked up. And I think also Derek did allude to the fact that this isn't the first time that he's had a phone call with an apology.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about Derek McInnes is this season, and I think he's probably the main manager in the league that can maybe come out with this, is that there's a lot of times where Kilmarnock haven't helped themselves
Yeah,
officiating wise. Like, do you know what I mean? They've probably been on the receiving end of more red cards, but they've been quite open about like that's been on us. There's been a couple of times this season where Derek McInnes has come out and says like we've had an apology and we feel this is wrong, we feel this isn't enough. Apologies are fine. Like apologies don't make a difference though in this sort of thing. It's corrective action. Like, and again, I'm bringing it back to Nick Walsh. Nick Walsh is in VAR for the Dundee Hearts game the weekend after. There doesn't
yeah.
seem to be. I'm not saying demote referees for weeks and things like that, but I just think we're so light in proper referees that we can trust. I think there's a set amount who are well in. I think is probably the best thing to say, and they get games no matter what. Now, I think there's a lot of referees who I think keep making mistake after mistake and they get high level of games, and I think it's wrong. I think apologies don't matter. There's the punishment isn't there. If we make a mistake in our jobs, we get punished. This isn't happening here.
I think that just shows you the lack of depth that we
Yep,
have at the
that's
top
exactly
end.
what it is. Yeah.
It's the lack of depth. Um, while we don't like to use the word punished, etc., you've got if Nick Walsh has been deemed to have made an error, and Willie's obviously spoke about the start of the year, if referees continually make errors, if players continually make errors, then they'll find themselves out of the team. That's what we were promised what would happen with refereeing. And I think every every referee would accept that as well. I've had maybe two or three games on the row on the bounce that haven't been as productive and haven't been as good as I would expected. Do you know what? Maybe just step me back for a week or
Mhm.
two. Let me get my confidence back. Let me get the way back in. Let me go and analyse my game. Let me go and see it. And I'm sure that's what they do. But it's the lack of depth and also the character who's deemed to be making these fouls that get them back in.
St Mirren had obviously come out with a statement as well on the second, which was on Sunday, I believe. St
Sunday.
Mirren are said to be leading the fight back against VAR by calling it to be run by an independent organisation and not the SFA. St Mirren had put out a statement earlier regarding their frustration at another wrong decision going against them at the weekend. Now, Stephen Robinson's part of that statement, it said Stephen Robinson's side have had 5 VAR decisions go against them this term. I think that is all correct. And Wally Collins came out and said it was 5 VAR decisions. Now, what they're saying is quite interesting, is that they're not saying what a lot of people I speak to are saying, is that the technology is the issue. What they're saying is they don't like how it's being run. Now, we've been of that, but I've certainly been of that opinion since it was brought in. I remember doing a column about it when VR was first brought in, saying it won't be the technology that will be at fault here, it's the way it will be used. And I'm being proved right here. It's people have got a problem with the way this is being operated.
Scott, I'm not being an after timer, and I'm going to give Steve credit for this as well. We've said since day one, from that October date that it came in for the very first time, technology works, right?
Yep.
You and I are sitting at opposite ends of computer screens, right? Very basic technology. Technology works. Am I good at computers? No, but I know how to work this.
Yeah.
Technology works. It's the people who operate it. That is the problem. But it's not even just the people who operate it, it's the training that they're given, when they should be making interventions, what they should be making interventions on, and have the courage to A, get involved, and B, when not to get involved. It's a human error, and that is always going to be the case. Whether you have, go back to Pierluigi Collina, Des Roach, Steve Conroy, anybody, it's human error and human fault that's at stake. Now, what the difficulty is, when I know a couple of these clubs have come out and said that they want it taken away from the SFA, that is never going to happen.
It's not going to happen, and
it's not going to happen.
It's important we say that now. That people thinking that's going to happen are kidding themselves on. Now we'll get into the KMI thing later, because I think that is something that might be taken away, but we'll touch on that. But in terms of, if you're saying VAR, which has been, and again we can obviously touch on, it's people have said to me VAR light. I don't really know what the difference is. There's better people like yourself who'll obviously be able to explain that. But there are problems, and we've said it from the beginning. There are problems with how it's being run. It's inconsistent. We saw in National Cup finals, where like you're hearing how chaotic it is in the background. You're hearing audio of it sounds like a mess. That's the problem here. It's not the technology. We're seeing the technology work. It's what I'd imagine if there's a big decision. All I'm imagining is 3 or 4 people in a control room having an absolute meltdown about how to give a decision, and then you've got a referee who's waiting on that rigmarole being conducted before he then makes a decision. It's just controlled chaos.
And what the referee's trying to do, he's trying to keep calm the guys who are on the pitch, who are exasperated and waiting to see what the outcome of this is going to be. So it does have to be operated far, far better. Has to be consistent. Has to be coached and managed far, far better than it currently is. And the ones that are losers are the people in the crowd, the people in the stadiums.
Yeah.
The guys at home can sort of roughly hear what commentators are saying. The guys in the crowd are waiting 3-4 minutes, and it's just not acceptable.
Well, we're recording this on Thursday, where we're in the middle of the Carabao Cup semi-finals, and obviously it's been brought in those games that the referee is giving his instruction, or the referee is giving his decision via the mic, which is obviously what you see in the NFL. You see that in cricket and things like that. How do you feel about that? Because I can imagine that if that was brought in Scotland, being an absolute shambles.
Well, do you know what? To be fair, it was something that I and Steve both agree with.
I would like it. I just know it wouldn't work here.
Well, I think it would work far better than just seeing something coming up on screen, VAR check, possible penalty. I would much rather see a referee going across. Listen, whatever you say, you're 50% are going to disagree with you, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you say.
Yeah.
But I would rather see the referee go across, have a look at this incident, potential shot pull, number 5, right? Okay, I looked at it. Then you come out and you say, decision, penalty kick, St St John's number 5, holding, done.
Yeah, and it works in the NFL when you probably got a bigger cheer for that sometimes in a touchdown or anything like that. And
but you're also including the fans in the entertainment experience.
Yes.
And you're making them feel valued. You're letting them know exactly what's going on, rather than just this statement up here on the screen, penalty kick. Do you know what? I would have no issue they don't need to hear the conversation that you're having
No.
with the person in VAR,
Yeah.
but they get to hear the incident rather than just you turn round, you see the wee screen, penalty kick, centre or whatever, bring it in, and again, transparency.
Well, that's the thing. If I'm at a game with VAR, I most of the time find out what's happened via television before I actually hear the decision
Yeah.
the ground. That's a problem. That's something I've said from the beginning. I remember the first game I was at with VAR was a European game, and I had a text telling me what had happened and what the VAR was for before it was brought to us in the stand. What had happened?
Mhm.
Like that to me in the kind of era of kind of modern technology is something that still shouldn't be happening. Do you know what I mean? It
No.
shouldn't be. The decisions are taking long enough as it is, but I just feel like as a fan in the stadium, you're kind of behind. Do you know what I mean? Like we should be kind of further on than that.
And it also lets the management know as well exactly
Yeah,
what's going on.
yeah, yeah. Would the answer to that be, as Stephen Robinson is suggesting here, for refs to go full time?
No, no. There's a couple of reasons for that. The most important thing is Scottish football doesn't create the finances to allow referees to go full time. I mean, England have got 20 full time officials in the
Yeah.
PGMOL. In Scotland, so that's 20, that's one per team for the Premier League. Could we afford 12 full time referees in Scotland
Well, the one thing that's thrown
on a
about
pro
here,
rata?
the one thing that's thrown about here is, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is if referees right now get more than a lot of people get a year. A referees get, I don't know what the fee is now. You'll obviously be able to clarify that, but I know it's over four figures a game
It's
for
just below four figures.
just below four figures. Do you know what I mean? That's more than a lot of people who are
And
watching this make a week,
they could potentially be doing
and they do to a
not all in the
game.
Premier League, couple of game in the
Yeah.
European games.
So, I mean,
So
it's a fair whack as an official. On top of, we know some of these referees that are refereeing now are lawyers, cops. Do you know what I mean? They're in pretty good jobs as it is. It's a discussion that can have. I just don't think it'll be happening anytime soon.
no. So the only time we got close to having a potentially full time referee was Craig Thompson a number of years
Mm,
ago.
yeah.
And Craig was Craig is a lawyer.
Hmm.
He was doing his UEFA stuff. He dropped down to, I think it was like 2.5 days a week, 3 days a week at most. So it gave him a couple of days to do his other stuff. I mean, I'm a principal teacher. There's guys who are in well remunerated jobs who've got pensions allocated to it as well. Am I going to give up my full-time position to go refereeing? Let's be honest, how long are you going to referee for?
Yeah. And
Maybe
what?
10
Yeah.
years, and what am I going to do after it? Am I going to go back into the same course of
And
work?
the other side of it is kind of long term like remuneration in terms of like pensions and things like that. That's
Exactly.
something that I don't think is like in the forefront. I think the problem here with it is that if you are if you're refereeing a big game, if you're refereeing a midweek game and you're coming from one of these very hard jobs which finish at 5 o'clock, you've maybe had a bad day there. You're coming in. Is your mindset in the right frame? And that can happen anywhere though. That's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I think that's the argument a lot of people are making.
I
But
think what you find as well, see the guys who have got a very high profile midweek game, they're taking a sacrifice, and a lot of them are taking half day
yeah,
holidays or a full day
definitely,
holiday.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're taking it because they understand the importance and the
Hmm.
demand that's going to be placed upon them. So they're making sacrifices not only for the game. Yes, they get well remunerated, which they deserve to be so,
Hmm.
but it's a lot of time away from their family and their training that they're doing as well, their meetings they have to attend. So I don't begrudge the referees the money they earn at all. Absolutely not. They work hard for it, do it. Would full-time refereeing in Scotland make them any better? I don't think it would. I don't think it's made them any better in England.
No, it's really not. I want to cover this though because that this is something I've been really wanting to talk about, and I think I'm quite glad this statement's been brought out. Actually, Dundee United did released a statement yesterday, basically raising VAR concerns, and then they'd pulled out, sending representatives to the KMI. Basically, just to read here, they believe the feedback provided by the SFA is inconsistent with the outcomes of the panel, which they say are based on views of panel members who, for the most part, lack significant expertise in the laws of the game. Now, I know I probably shouldn't. I'm not going to name them, but I know a couple of people who've been on the KMI panels, and I know for a fact. I'm not saying this because it's in any sort of bitterness. They should be nowhere near making decisions like that. And I know it's independent. I know it's something that Wally Collins came out and said himself. It's nothing really to do with the SFA, but it's the sort of people that are on the KMI panels. I think at times are ridiculous. So I'm quite glad somebody in a big club has called this out.
Yeah, and let's be fair, Dundee United are having a really good season. They're
Hmm.
getting more things right than they're wrong. So you'd be more expecting clubs who are down at the bottom end of the league who've maybe had a few things going against them that would be coming out. Like you, I was I was I was pleasantly surprised that Dundee United came out of this and they broke ranks. There was a couple of comments they made in it. I mean, they spoke about the purposeness, the effectiveness, and the impact that the KMI has been having in game. But that one statement that built the whole picture, as you quite rightly touched on, it says lack of significant experience of the laws of the game. Why are you giving your view on factual decisions
Mm.
that you don't have enough experience on?
Yeah.
I mentioned it when we were talking earlier. A show was on the other night there. Why am I going to go and put my car into a garage to have the brake cables fixed or the timing belt fixed if the guy who's going to be fixing it isn't he a mechanic, but he knows what an engine looks like?
Yeah, that's the
That's
thing.
that's that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
When you have a panel, have football people on it, absolutely. They can have a balanced opinion what they think of it. But you have to have someone who's there who knows the laws of the game and how to apply the laws of the game to that individual scenario, because that's what they're there for. And if those people who are on it, and I don't know who they are, certainly not me or Steve, um, if you're going to have someone who's making a comment and have a valid and have a substantive opinion that then gets broadcast without the knowledge, I'm sorry, well, you're irrelevant. You should not be there.
Well, here's a line as well that's in it that I'm quite interested in as well. It says subsequent outcomes have been magnified be it by external media misrepresentations, placing undue pressure on our match officials and potentially influencing decisions on future matches. Now, I don't know. I've kind of got a sneaky suspicion what that means, but with that as well, what they're basically saying is because decisions are made and people like ourselves will be talking about them, that puts pressure on referees going forward. Now that's kind of the problem with being in a public domain like referees are, and that's where I don't think anything will change. But the KMI panel was brought in as one of the kind of new things to be an independent kind of marking the homework thing. The problem with that was bringing people in who, and I know there's two people in particular I know who have never refereed a game in their life, who are on this panel who should not be anywhere near it. Now
Mhm.
that's a problem because if I'm a referee and I'm getting told you're not on this panel because such and such are, the first thing I'd be going is, well, why are they in this position? It should
Exactly.
be people. It should like I'm not advocating you for a position here, Des or Steve, but I wouldn't like the thought of somebody marking my homework who doesn't know the subject of what I'm writing about or what I'm doing. That to me is the thing I don't get is this KMI panel's in hindsight a good idea, but bringing in people who have next to no knowledge or understanding of what they're meant to do is wrong and just leads to is what we're talking about and what's been put out in
Exactly
that
as I said.
statement problems.
Exactly as I said. These guys or ladies, whoever they may be,
Yeah.
are completely irrelevant. Now, if I was a referee and I've had my mark from the referee observer and the Scottish FA process, etc., see if I'm getting a looking at a KMI incident down the road and I know that Joe Bloggs the plumber or whoever has made an opinion on it, do you know what? It makes as much relevance to me as a comment in a Sunday Mail. I
Mm.
could not care less. And this is where the SFA have again diminished their own responsibility and diminished their own credibility.
Yeah.
If you're going to have this panel, then get it right with football people who are in a well positioned and knowledgeable basis to make it. Now, one of the things that that I've thought for it is, well, we can't name who these people are, right? It's totally independent, which is their right. Why don't they announce at the start of the season that they have a bank of the key match incident review panel will consist of 25, 30 members. These members are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. These are. You don't need to say who's on the panel that particular week, but at least you can look down and say, well, there's an ex-manager, there's an ex-coach, there's an ex-referee. You can look and see what the standing these people have. If I look at it and see it's a club treasurer or somebody who has not done anything, then why are they there? Surely this panel has to be made up of people of some reputation and standing repute within the game, whose views are respected, and they have a working knowledge of how the refereeing fraternity and how the refereeing process works. So yeah, I've got to admit, the more I'm hearing about the KMI, the less credence I give it, if I actually give it any credence anyway.
I mean, it's something that we can definitely discuss. I don't see it changing, but there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of things that are.
Let's be honest, they're not going to change the selections of a referee for the next Saturday.
No, they're not. They're not. But it's like there's so many solutions here that just seem logical, but they aren't going to. Do you know what I mean? Like I think we're always going to be in the position where managers have every right to make statements. I was on here one of the first times I did the show, and I said about Stephen Robinson. I think they'd won the game, and I said if Stephen Robinson hadn't won that game, I could see that interview going very differently.
Yeah.
So referees can make mistakes, right? We're not that, but they need the support from above. They need the backing that above are doing the right things by them, and they're getting all the help possible to succeed. They aren't, and
not quite clearly.
That's where I'm quite worried about, like how bad this gets. I don't think we're in the territory of like referee strikes or anything like that, and I hope we're not, because I remember how bad it was the last time. But we're at the stage where, right, statements are going to keep coming, and this is only going to get like there's only going to be more things coming out, and by then, like, yeah, I mean, I'm saying it from a quite a cynical point of view, like, it gives us things to talk about, but I don't really think it's great if two clubs already are coming out saying that we are seriously questioning the integrity of how this massive thing that impacts games is being operated.
Yep, and we've seen it in other countries in Northern Europe.
And we've seen VAR removed. Yeah, we've seen it removed from certain leagues.
No, I don't want it removed.
I'm not wanting it removed. I just want it used better. I just want it, as you say, better training and just a bit more common sense and a bit more logic applied. And by then, I think we'd be fine. Like,
well, that's what we always say, isn't it? If you don't go looking for trouble, because it will find you. Just get it done right and get it done right the first time.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're obviously going to have Scottish Cup weekend as well, and you're going to have the thing as well, which I think is a problem, and I've said this as well in other leagues. You're going to have, I don't think that there's going to be a quarter of the games can have VAR. Like, because the VAR's there, but there's some games where you can't. Like, I mean, Ayr play Hibs on Friday night or Monday night.
Friday night.
That can't be used.
Yeah.
So what if there's a massive decision, but it can be used at range? It's just nonsense.
Clubs can opt into it and clubs can opt out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing is ridiculous.
If you can't use it in every game from round one, then should only be introduced when it gets to the semi-final. When it's at Hampden, then all teams are under the same scrutiny. Because while some games have it and some don't, it's not an even, fair competition. No. And that's what cup competition is all about.
Well, we will be back we'll obviously be recording again on Sunday. We'll have a bit more. We'll talk about the big decisions over the weekend there. It's Scottish Cup weekend. We'll have a lot. There will be stuff, I'd imagine, we'll discuss. We're going to open up as well where if we see any decisions on any other leagues, we're going to obviously have a look at that as well. So send them into our Twitter, Facebook and things like that. Des, I think we'll have a 3-man panel next week. So thank you very much as always for carrying the load.
No problem at all. I'm sure I'm going to hump quite soon.
Yep. Thank you very much, everyone that's tuned in, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.